What's going on, guys? It's Elias. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a short drive in the C8 Corvette, and we're going to be answering a question that's been going around the internet for quite a bit now, and that's whether or not we should all be changing our oil at around 500 miles. Now, this has been a thing for quite a long time, so in today's video, I'm going to cover some of the technical issues surrounding it, some of the historical problems with Corvettes and other cars surrounding new oil and new engines, and then I'm going to answer the question on whether or not you, as a C8 Corvette owner, should change your oil at 500 miles and what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and take a little drive, but first, on this little cold, wintry day, nothing warms the heart more than a cold start from a V8. Alright, so changing your oil early, right, at 500 miles, that's been a thing for quite a long time, and for many different reasons. So one of the main reasons why people like to change their oils early is because back in the day, and I'm saying like 20 years ago, it was normal for you to buy a new car and within the first 500 to 1,000 miles to have to change your oil. And on older cars, when cars came out back in the 60s, 70s, those times, it was even more of a thing to change your oil early. That's due to many factors. So here's some of the technicalities behind the reasoning people did that. When you get a new engine, everything is nice and tight. All the tolerances are pretty tight, especially these modern engines. Their tolerances are very tight, but even the older ones, everything is always pretty tight, and an engine is just a lot of moving parts, has a lot of moving parts in there. That's why we have to use proper engine oil to lubricate everything. So when an engine is breaking in, it's not 100% broken in until all of the metal is working well together. As it breaks in, you'll get little bits of metal shavings in the oil. Now, to be clear, even if your engine has 300,000 miles in it, 200,000 miles on it, it'll still be shaving some metals into your oil. That's why when you do an oil analysis, you're looking for those different types of metals that are in your engine. So when you see a certain kind of metal, let's say, for example, copper or magnesium or titanium, it can mean different things for your engine, and it could be, you know, pointing to different failures or whatever the case may be. On new engines, as you're breaking in the engine, it's very, very normal for everything to wear in together and therefore expel a lot more metal than you're used to seeing on a fully broken in engine. So one of the main reasons to change the oil early is so that those metals are not suspended in the oil and then gets into your oil passages. That could increase your wear of your engine due to oil passages not being properly lubricated, or, you know, sometimes it could even gunk up some of the passages within the engine. So for a long time, people have been changing their oils early. Now, more recently, Corvette specific oils have been changed more frequently because, first of all, it's a sports car. You want to change your oil more frequently anyway. But second, on the Z51 Package, with that dry sump oiling system, when they first introduced that dry sump oiling system, they actually figured out an issue with the oiling system that showed extra materials in the oil after just about 500 miles. It's due to the manufacturing process, how they used to glue together the dry sump oil capture or sump. It left extra material in the oil that you wanted to take out within 500 miles, and so Chevy, GM, sent out a bulletin saying all C7 Z51 Packages car needs to have their engines oil replaced within 500 miles of buying it. That's pretty cool to know, and that's why most Chevy dealers, most people that own Corvettes, have this notion that you need to change your oil within for the first 500 miles. And honestly, it's not the worst practice in the world. Changing your oil at 500 miles is not the worst thing to do. Now, am I going to be doing that? My answer is no. Here's why. So, as I've stated, modern engines do have tighter tolerances, so you'd expect them to have more metal suspended in the oil. That is true. But with modernity and technology, you get better materials too. And better materials when it comes to oil, first, and second, when it comes to oil filters. So obviously, GM engineers that created this beautiful LT2 engine, the root of the LT1 engine in the C7, they knew exactly what they were doing. And they knew that this was going to have a dry sump oiling system from the get-go. It was not going to ever not have a dry sump oiling system. So because of that, GM went ahead and designed the engine oil and oil filter around a break-in procedure for that car. Now, if you guys know, there's break-in time and procedure for this car. The first 500 miles, you can't take it above 3,500 RPMs. You can't, it has reduced power, reduced torque, all that good stuff is to protect a lot of the different parts of the engine and car. I actually did a full video on that. If you go ahead and click, there's a link in the description to the playlist of the C8 Corvette, and it'll show you what not to do in your brand new car. But regardless of that, GM engineers also knew that you did not have to change the engine oil so soon after you get the car. 500 miles, it's honestly too soon. Again, the oil filter's much better at filtering out those small, fine particles found after an engine is being broken in. That's number one. And number two, the oil that we're using, the 0W40 full synthetic Mobil 1 oil, is an excellent oil. I mean, pretty much any 0W40 oil that you can buy today is a very, very good oil in any car. I use 0W40 in my Civic Type R race car that I take to the track, and I beat on it relentlessly. And while that's a K20 engine, very reliable Honda engine, I don't expect any issues. First of all, the newer engine oils allow companies like Honda and GM to make high performance motors and not worry too much about lubrication. So the other reason I'm not going to change this too early is because there's no need. It's basically a waste of money and time to change your oil too early. Changing your oil too early, you know, not going to harm anything, but you're basically wasting your money, right? If you think about it, the engine oil in here is basically designed to last around 6,000 miles at the very least. Now, I'm not going to wait till 6,000 miles to change this oil, and I'll go into that at the end, but all you have to do to make sure your car is running right is, again, follow the manual, right? And the manual states that it'll basically tell you when it needs to change the oil, first of all. And second, not only will it tell you, you're going to get around 6,000 to 7,000 miles, maybe 8,000 miles in one oil change, every oil change, right? Now, if you take it to track, or if you take it to you know, hard canyon driving, or if it's extremely hot or extremely cold, or if you haven't changed the oil in over 6 to 8 months, you should probably change the oil anyway. But if you change it sooner than you need to change it, you probably are just wasting your money. Like I said, the fine particles in the oil, you know, after you're breaking in the engine, those particles are being filtered out anyway. So to change your oil for that, it's not a good reason. And then finally, well, let's get into what you should do, and that's you should check your oil level as you go along. So another reason most people think that you should change your oil after 500 miles is because, again, back in the day, a lot of manufacturers used to put in a special break-in oil at the beginning of a car's life. Now, this oil was good for an engine for its braking properties, but probably not very good to keep in there for a very long time. It has different additives, different zinc additives, different things in there to help a maturing engine that's just came out of the factory to break in properly. Now, you don't want that staying in your car for very long. So they used to put in the manuals to change your oil in 500 miles. You definitely don't have to do that in this car. This engine does not have any real special oil into it. You know, you can change it early, right? There's no harm in changing it early, like I've said, because there's no special engine oil that GM uses. It's 0W40 from Mobil 1. So that's basically the last myth as to why people think that changing oil at 500 miles is necessary. So instead of changing your oil at 500 miles, what do I recommend? What am I going to do? So I'm not gonna wait until I hit 6,000 miles to change the oil. I'm going to probably change here within the next 300 to 400 miles. So when I get to around 3,000 miles is when I'll change it. And that's mainly because before I do a track day, my first track day in this vehicle, I want to make sure that everything is tip-top shape. So I'm going to go ahead and get the oil changed then. If I wasn't going to do a track day, I'd probably just wait until the car tells me, or maybe until 5,000 miles to change the oil. I don't necessarily want to wait until 8,000 to 9,000 miles to change the oil the first time. Like I said, that first oil is going to have a ton of metal shavings in there. I would like to take them out sooner rather than later. But you're not really hurting anything by not doing so. So finally, the last thing I would say is, you know, change your oil a little bit earlier than you normally would, right? Between 3,000 and 5,000 miles. If you're gonna do a track day, change your oil before that track day is probably the prudent thing to do. And then, yeah, in between fill up. So every time you fill up, I would definitely check your oil level. So how do you check the oil level in the C8 Corvette Z51 Package? I'm gonna show you guys right now. Alright, so how do you check the oil first? You leave the car on, make sure it's up to temperature, and I'm going to show you which temperature that is. So right there you can see it is 160 transmission fluid, and the most important one is 169 oil temperature. It went up to 171, which is great. So that's how you know it's up to temperature. Alright, let's go to the engine bay and check that oil level. You gotta find your trunk button. Then you're going to find the dipstick right here. So you're going to take it out, and you're going to check to make sure that the oil is within the hash marks of the dipstick. It's that simple. Alright, there it is. It's between those two hash marks, or it's actually a little bit higher than it needs to be, which is great. It means there's no burning of any oil, basically. That's awesome. Make sure you have a little napkin or rag to get it out and clean it off.